25, I had an empty wallet, zero in the bank, and a bag full of promises I couldn't keep. That's when I met a person whose simple philosophy changed my course forever. The 7 principles I learned became my sail, steering me from hopelessness to success. In this video, I'll share these philosophies with you, tested not by theory, but by life itself. And at the end, we'll break them down step by step, so you'll know exactly where to begin changing your path today. You can study all the intricacies of the market, read hundreds of books, and attend dozens of trainings, but if you haven't changed what's inside, the outside will stay the same. This is a truth I learned too late. At 25, I was just a regular guy from a farm in Idaho, with no money, no prospects, and empty eyes. I wasn't stupid, I just didn't know how to live. I wasn't taught the philosophy of success, I was taught how to survive. But then I realized that survival is not living. And that's when I heard something that changed my mindset. Success is not an event, it's a philosophy. Not a single gesture, not luck, but a set of beliefs you choose every day. All great change starts not with techniques, but with understanding. And today I'll share with you 7 philosophies that saved my career, my family, and my dignity. This isn't something I read, it's something I lived. Each of these philosophies is like a new direction. They don't change the wind, they change your sail. And if you've changed your sail, it doesn't matter which way the wind blows. And you know what? The greatest discovery is that you don't have to change everything in a day. But if you change something today, everything else will start to change on its own. Philosophy number 1, set of the sail, not the wind. This was one of the first phrases I heard from my mentor, Mr. Showoff. He said to me, "Jim, it's not the wind that determines your course, it's the set of the sail." And in that moment, even though I didn't fully understand it right away, I felt that this wasn't just a metaphor. It was a truth that explains why the same circumstances can be a chance for some and a defeat for others. I was young, confused, in debt, and without a dream. I complained, what can I do with this kind of economy, with prices rising, with an employer who pays peanuts? I looked for excuses in the wind, in everything but myself. And Showoff calmly looked me in the eyes and said, "The wind blows on us all the same. Everyone faces storms. Everyone goes through changes. But some sail to the island of dreams, while others stay stuck. Why? Because some know how to set their sail." And here's what I realized: we can't control the events. We can only control how we respond to them. Someone loses their job and falls into depression. Someone else takes that same moment and starts a business. Same wind, different sail. Same news, different interpretation. Everything that happens to us is neutral. We are the ones who assign meaning, and that meaning determines the direction of our life. You know, I often imagine myself as the captain of a ship. The sea is the world. The wind is politics. The weather, neighbors, the news, illness, the economy. But how I hold the wheel that decides where I'm headed. If I develop my mind, my course is steady. If I'm skillful in my words, decisions, and choice of people, my sail is full. But if I let fear or apathy take over, my sail is down even when the wind is blowing in my favor. Write this down. It's not that the wind of success isn't blowing in your direction. You just haven't learned how to catch it yet. And I know that might sting. It means you can't blame anyone anymore, not your parents. Not politicians, not your employer, not even your past. But that's where the freedom lies. Because if the problem is within me, then the answer is too. If you change the direction of your sail, you'll change your course. I remember one day very clearly. I had just quit another job, and once again I had nothing. And instead of looking for someone else to blame, I stopped. I sat down with a notebook and asked myself, how do I respond to life? What is the shape of my sail? Is it too low? And from that moment, my inner revolution began. I started reading every day. I started keeping a journal. I started asking myself, what can I change today, even slightly, even by a degree, to change my tomorrow? Because you see, you don't need to suddenly change your entire course. You just need to shift your direction. 1 degree today, and a month from now, you'll be on a completely different shore. And if you're listening to this video right now, know this: your hand is already on the wheel. You're no longer just a passenger, you're the captain. And from this moment on, it's no longer about the wind, it's about you. In the next philosophy, I'll tell you exactly how a captain sets the course through the power of goals. But before we go there, ask yourself this: how fully is your sail currently set toward your dream? Philosophy number 2, learn to set goals. The art of living by design, not by default. After I understood that the wind wasn't to blame, it was time to face the truth. I didn't just lack a sail, I didn't even have a course. I was drifting. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV. The next day, repeat. Sound familiar? Because most people don't have a life, they have a schedule. And that's how I lived until my mentor asked, "Jim, what are your goals?" I didn't even know how to answer. I wanted money, maybe a new car, but I had no clear response. Then he said something that hit me like a bell in silence. If you don't have a plan for your own life, chances are you'll become part of someone else's. It was like a cold shower. I realized that's why I was earning peanuts. That's why I was tired, drained, and going nowhere. I was living without a map, without a compass, without a dream. From that moment, I began to learn how to set goals, not wishes, not vague wants. Fussing, but real, measurable, inspiring goals that were truly mine. And here's what I learned. A goal is like a lighthouse. It doesn't pull you in. It gives you direction. If you have a goal, the day has meaning. Every action either brings you closer to it or pulls you further away, which means you now have a standard for your choices. You're no longer just living, you're moving. I started small. I wrote down on a piece of paper, earn $100 more than I do now by the end of the month. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel desire. I felt an internal agreement. I committed to action. But there was more. Shoaf taught me, you don't just need to have goals, you need to see them every day, on paper, on the wall, in your imagination, in your journal. A goal that isn't written down is just a dream, he said. So I started journaling my goals in the morning, before bed, rereading them, reviewing them, adjusting them. It changed my mental chemistry. One day I asked my mentor, what if I set a goal and don't reach it? He smiled and replied, if you don't set one, you definitely won't reach it. That's when I understood a goal isn't a guarantee of success, it's a guarantee of focus. One more thing, I started noticing that people with clear goals carry themselves differently, they walk differently, they speak differently, because when you know where you're going, you radiate resolve. And resolve attracts opportunity. People begin to see someone worth paying attention to. And you're no longer just living, you're designing your reality. My first written goals seemed modest, but they got me moving. Eventually I set bigger goals speaking to audiences, earning more than I spend, being a worthy husband and father. And you know what? I've exceeded some of them. Others are still in progress, but none are lost because they all keep me in motion. Now I turn to you. Do you have goals written down, specific, clear? If not, don't be surprised if you feel exhausted. Because without direction, any movement is draining. But with direction, even hardship becomes energizing. The next philosophy is about studying success, because setting a goal is the beginning. But learning how others reach theirs, that's acceleration. Before we move on, though, I want you to do one thing. Write down one goal right now. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. Because from this moment on, you're not just a listener, you're the author of your journey. Philosophy number 3, study success. Success leaves clues. Your job is to find them. I remember those early days when I had just begun to shift the direction of my sail and learn to set my first goals. It was time for the most important question. How do I achieve all of this? And you know what my mentor told me? He looked at me calmly and said, success leaves clues. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to watch closely, listen carefully, and learn. That was a revelation, because before that, I thought successful people were different, that they had something I didn't: connections, talent, startup capital, and I was just Jim from a farm in Idaho. But as it turns out, success is not magic. It's a method. It can be studied. It can be replicated if you're willing to be a careful student. I started small. I listened when people spoke, people who had what I wanted. I observed how they acted, how they responded, how they treated others, how they organized their day. And the more I listened, the more I realized they just knew something I didn't. But knowing doesn't mean being a genius. It means learning and applying. One day I gave myself an assignment: find 5 reasons why one person succeeds and another doesn't. And here's what it boiled down to. Those who succeed are always learning. They're not afraid to ask dumb questions. They know how to listen. They copy wisely. They're grateful for every lesson. And that was revolutionary for me, because I realized I didn't have to figure everything out on my own. I just had to look for the clues of success and follow them. When I found out successful people read books, I started reading. When I learned they kept journals, I did the same. When I discovered they avoided gossip and toxic conversations, I began guarding my circle. Success isn't about being better than everyone. Success is strategies plus consistency, and strategies can be learned. I started attending seminars, listening to tapes, buying books. Sometimes I didn't have extra money, but I spent my last $3 on a brochure about sales, and it changed the way I viewed the customer, because knowledge is a seed, and when you plant, daily harvest is inevitable. Another key thing I learned: successful people don't just act, they think about why they act the way they do. They analyze, learn from mistakes, draw conclusions. Unsuccessful people, on the other hand, often repeat the same actions expecting different results. They don't study, they just operate on autopilot. My mentor used to say, "Jim, you can learn in 2 ways: through your own experience or through the mistakes of others. The first is painful and slow, the second is smart," and I chose the second. Now think about this. Do you have examples of people whose lifestyle, mindset, or results inspire you? And now do you study them? Not just admire, not just like, but really study? What are their habits? How do they start their day? How do they make decisions? Who do they spend time with? One of the biggest mistakes is thinking successful people are different. But the moment you start studying them like a textbook, they become not unreachable, but understandable. And what is understood can be repeated. The next philosophy will be a bit unusual. It's not about language, business, or money. It's about journaling, because as it turns out, wisdom is born in writing and reflection. But before we move on, here's my challenge to you. Find 3 people you consider successful and write down what exactly you can learn from them. Then take action. You don't need to copy everything, but finding a footprint and stepping into it is what separates a student from a dreamer. Philosophy number 4, and keep a journal. Write down life, because memory lies but paper doesn't. I've always said, don't trust your memory. It's weak. Trust ink, it leaves a trace. One of the greatest gifts I've ever received wasn't money, status, or stages with thousands of people. It's my collection of journals. Sometimes I flip through old entries, pages with yellowed corners, and I think, I'm so glad I wrote this down, because if I hadn't, I would have forgotten. And that means I would have lost it. My mentor, Mr. Schuff, once told me, "Jim, everyday life gives you a lesson, but whether you keep it or not doesn't depend on memory, it depends on your pen." Back then, I wasn't into writing things down. It felt unnecessary. But then I made my first entry something simple. Today I realize that my habits are my enemies. And a few weeks later, when I reread that page, it hit me I was on the edge of slipping back into old habits. And that one line reminded me who I had decided to become. The thing is, a journal isn't just a notebook. It's a mirror. It's a friend. It's a map. Inside it are your ideas, victories, failures, discoveries, quotes, anger, hopes, and disappointments. But most importantly, it holds your true self. And when you have a space where you can be honest, you start to think differently. I carried my journal everywhere, to church, to restaurants, to seminars, because you never know when wisdom will strike. And if you don't catch it, it leaves. In life, there are moments that change everything, and there are sentences worth more than dozens of books. If you write them down, they stay with you forever. If you miss them, they're gone for good. One time I was at a seminar, and a man on stage said something that froze me in my seat. "What you avoid is exactly what's holding you back." I grabbed my pen and wrote it down immediately. Months later, while preparing my own speech, I found that note and realized it became the foundation for an entire chapter of my future book. You might ask, what exactly should I write? The answer is anything that speaks to you. Heard a wise phrase? Write it down. Got a new idea? Write it down. Feeling uncertain? Write it down. Made a mistake and learned from it? Write it down. Because a journal is like an investment account. You deposit into it daily, and over months or years you withdraw interest in the form of insight, clarity, and strength. I knew people who kept journals not for others but for themselves 5 years from now. And when things got hard, they read who they used to be and remembered they'd faced similar challenges before. Self-awareness is the best form of inner therapy. But you know what's most valuable about journaling? It teaches you to think on paper. And when you think on paper, you clear your mind. You stop looping the same thoughts in your head, and you begin to see clearly. From that clarity, solutions emerge. I've always taught, successful people think, but truly strong ones they write, because they don't just live, they document. And that means they grow consciously. Now I have one question for you. Do you have a journal? If not, don't wait for Monday. Don't look for the perfect notebook. Start with a scrap of paper today. Write down what struck you most from this video, and start there. Because the next philosophy is about choice, about why being a student matters more than being a blind follower. But before we go there, take this one step. Begin your conversation with yourself on paper, because as I said many years ago, weak memory is ordinary, but a strong journal, that's an extraordinary tool. Philosophy number 5, don't be a follower, be a good student. Don't worship, investigate, don't believe, verify. When I first started my journey, I was too trusting. If someone wore a nice suit, spoke persuasively, or had an impressive story, I believed them. And not just believed, I copied them, sometimes blindly. And I quickly realized blind following is a shortcut to disappointment, because even the right advice applied without understanding can become a trap. That's why the 5th philosophy I want to share with you sounds simple, but it runs deep. Don't be a follower, be a good student. My mentor, Mr. Schoaf, taught me, not everything that sounds smart is truth. And not everything that sounds simple actually works. Investigate. This means don't be someone who blindly repeats. Be someone who thinks. Don't just swallow chew. Don't just applaud, analyze. I remember hearing a catchy line at a seminar, if you want to be rich, just act like the rich. It sounded appealing. But I asked myself, how exactly do they act? Do I really understand their decision-making system? Or am I just seeing the surface, the cars, the offices, the shine? And that's when I learned the real lesson. Don't copy success, study the logic of success. Being a good student doesn't mean agreeing, it means being curious. When I read a book, I don't just highlight, I write questions in the margins. When I listen to a talk, I don't just take notes, I ask, how does this apply to my context? When someone gives me advice, I don't rush to follow it. I test it, verify it, adapt it. Because as my mentor said, learning isn't copying, it's understanding. Take the seed, discard the husk. You know why so many people go to seminars, read books, listen to motivation for years and still don't change? Because they're followers, not students. They admire but don't analyze. They remember but don't apply. And success doesn't live in quotes. It lives in thinking. One of my first speaking gigs was in a small hall, 50 people, wooden chairs, and an old PA system. I spoke about self-discipline. After the talk, a man came up to me and said, I disagree with you. I believe inspiration is more important than discipline. Before, I might have argued, but that day I replied differently. All right, and how have you applied that in your life? What results has it brought? He went silent. There was no answer. That's when I realized it's not worth arguing. It's worth asking. Because a real student doesn't aim to be right, he aims to understand. He doesn't seek victories in words, he seeks depth in meaning. When you start living like a student, everything changes. You become curious, flexible, open. You learn not just from victories, but from failures. Not just from gurus, but from life itself. You seek not what sounds good, but what actually works. My journal is full of entries like, this sounds right, but I haven't tested it yet. Or that wise thought, but not for this stage. And that gave me strength because I wasn't a passive consumer of wisdom. I was its researcher. Now let me ask you, do you repeat other people's words or do you analyze them? Do you take everything on faith or do you train your own thinking? Are you a student or just a spectator? The next philosophy will be unexpected. It's about money, but not just money. It's about the difference between income and freedom. But before we get there, here's my challenge to you. Next time you hear a good piece of advice, don't apply it right away. Ask yourself, why does this work? Where has it already shown results? And how does it look in my life? Because that's where wisdom is born. And that's what separates a follower from a student. Philosophy number 6. Profits are better than wages. Wages feed you, but profits set you free. I didn't understand this truth right away. Like most people, I grew up believing that a job meant stability, that the main goal was to find a good employer, work your honest 8 hours, watch TV in the evening, and wait for the weekend. But that mindset kept me trapped. At 25, I had pennies in my pocket, unpaid bills, and promises to my family I couldn't keep. I was an employee. I worked honestly, hard, diligently, but I was going nowhere. Then my mentor said something that flipped my financial worldview. If you work a job, you earn wages to survive. But if you start working on yourself and your ideas, you earn profits to live. Wages are great, but they're limited. Someone else sets them. Their ceiling doesn't depend on you. Profit is different. It's freedom, scale, potential. And here's the key. Profit doesn't always mean your own company. Profit is when you create value that works for you. I started with network marketing. Why? Because I had no startup capital, no office, no connections. But I had two things: time after work and a desire to break free. So when someone offered me the chance to try something of my own with zero entry barriers, I said yes. I started working for myself after I worked for someone else. And I quickly noticed the difference. For the same amount of effort I put into my job, I earned a fixed amount. But for the same effort in my own project, I earned more, and each week more. Because here's the truth. A job pays you for your time. Profit pays you for your value. At a job, you trade hours for money. In business, you trade ideas for opportunities. And over time, your income from profit can surpass your wages. For me, that happened in a few months. And then I left my job not because I hated it, but because I saw a bigger path. One more thing, a salary creates dependency. People hold on to jobs not because they love them, but because they fear losing them. That's financial fear dressed up as stability. But stability without growth is stagnation. Profit is different. It forces you to grow, to learn, to build a team, to take risks, to think strategically. And even when it's hard, you feel, I'm in control, I'm creating, I'm building. And that gives you not just money, it gives you dignity. Does that mean everyone should quit their job? No, but everyone should understand there are two types of work, the kind that sustains your present and the kind that builds your future. And if you want choice, influence, and freedom, you need to direct at least part of your energy toward creating profit. Start small. Start in the evenings. Start on weekends. But start, because when you only work for someone else, you'll always remain dependent. Also remember, profit isn't always about money. It can be time, flexibility, inner fulfillment, the sense that you're building something of your own, something that works even while you sleep. And trust me, it's worth it. So now I ask you, are you working only for a wage, or have you started building profit? Are you still living in survival mode or stepping into creation mode? The next philosophy will be the warmest one, because it's not about money or goals, it's about the heart, about how real life begins when we learn how to live well. But before we go there, do this. Write down what kind of profit you want to create in your life and what first step you can take this week to get there. Because only those who build earn their freedom. Philosophy number 7, learn how to live well. Life isn't just about living long, but living deep. Not just right, but fully. I learned how to earn. I learned how to speak. I learned how to build a business and help others do the same. But one day, when I had money, freedom, and a schedule I created myself, I woke up and realized, if you don't learn how to live well, everything else loses meaning. Because what does it mean to live well? It's not about yachts or mansions, not applause or the number of zeros in your bank account. Living well means feeling that the day has flavor, that you didn't just go through it, you filled it with kindness, presence, meaning. It means having someone to share the evening with. It means being able to smile, not because everything's perfect, but because you're grateful. It's about pausing in the middle of the weekday, taking a deep breath and saying, yes, I'm living, not just surviving. My mentor used to say, Jim, don't wait for Sunday to be kind. Don't wait for old age to be wise. And don't wait for a crisis to feel alive. I remember a moment when I was speaking in front of thousands, bright lights, a successful event, but afterward I returned to my hotel room, sat down, and felt empty. I was recognized, but not truly alive inside. And then I remembered the advice I used to give others. Don't forget to be human. Don't forget to give. Don't forget to find joy in the little things. To live well means to give, and not always money, sometimes attention, sometimes advice, sometimes a hug. And here's the wonder: when you start giving, you start receiving more than when you were asking, because life loves open hands. Also, living well means celebrating small things. Many people say, when I achieve something big, then I'll celebrate. But I'll tell you the opposite. If you don't enjoy a cup of coffee, a quiet morning, a child's smile, you won't enjoy millions either. Because joy doesn't come from the outside. It lives in your ability to notice it. I have a note in my journal: a truly rich person is someone who is grateful before they receive. I reread it whenever a day feels heavy. And you know what? The day doesn't change. But I do. And that's the power. Another thing, living well means learning to forgive, not dragging the past behind you, not carrying resentment like luggage with no wheels. Because resentment doesn't hurt the one you're angry at. It hurts you. And when you release your heart, your mind, body, and life are freed as well. And finally, living well means leaving a mark. Not necessarily a big one, but a sincere one. After talking to you, someone should want to live better. After spending a day with you, something bright should remain. That's what it means to live with capital, not just financial, but soulful. So this seventh philosophy isn't about technique, it's about depth. It's about the daily art of being human. Because if you work your whole life but forget why you're living, then who did you work for? Now, my question for you is, have you learned how to live well or just how to work efficiently? Do you stop to give thanks, or are you always chasing the next goal? Is your life a melody you feel or just a to-do list? In the next part, we'll pause, not just to summarize, but to look inward, because I'll ask you 5 questions that may shift your direction, not forever, but for the better. For now, write down one thought. I don't just want to achieve, I want to live, and live well. I'm glad you're still here. That means something inside you is already beginning to shift, because those who stay until the end, they're not just listeners, they're seekers. And this part, it's for you. Interactive, deep. It's not about me, it's about you. I want you right now as you watch, not just to listen, but to feel, to think, and to respond. In real time, not perfectly, not intellectually, but honestly, because now I'm going to ask you 5 questions. And each one isn't just a question, it's a mirror. Each one is a challenge. Each one is a chance to see where you are and where you want to go. And you'll rate yourself from 1 to 10, where 1 equals not at all true for me, 10 equals completely true for me. Ready? Relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and think not with your head, but with your heart. Question 1. How clearly do I know where I'm going in life? Do I have a course, or am I still drifting with the wind? Because when there's no goal, there's no direction, and even the best day feels empty. What score would you give yourself from 1 to 10? Question 2. How actively am I learning from people who already have what I'm striving for? Am I really studying success? Or do I still think they're different and it's not meant for me? Am I searching for strategies or just collecting inspirational images? Be honest. 1 to 10. Question 3. How consistently am I keeping a journal, notebook, or personal record? Am I writing down my life, or am I letting memory erase the lessons I'm getting every day? A journal is a mirror of your thoughts. Without it, we just repeat the same cycles. And you? How well are you tracking your own story, 1 to 10? Question 4. How much do I really think for myself instead of just repeating what I've heard from others? Do I ask questions? Do I verify? Do I analyze? Am I a student or just a consumer of ideas? How would you rate your critical thinking from 1 to 10? Question 5. How well am I actually living, not successfully, not productively, but deeply? Do I find joy in the simple things? Am I grateful? Do I give more than I take? Do I see beauty in the everyday or only in my dreams? This is the most honest question, and the answer is yours alone. So 5 mirrors, 5 self-assessments, 5 entry points to a new you. Don't pause the video, just reflect, and write your answers down later after it ends. Because true reflection doesn't come in noise, it comes in silence. If you want, share your scores in the comments. If not, keep them to yourself. But don't let these questions pass you by. Revisit them, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, but definitely with a pen in hand. And one more thing. If these words touch something in you, if even one question made you pause and think, hit like. Subscribe. Not for me, for you. So you don't lose the voice that's calling you, because you're no longer where you used to be, but you're not yet where you're going. And it's exactly in this space that change is born. Change starts with you, not with a book, not with a video, but with a decision. So make it. And write this down. I won't just get through this year, I'll make it mine. Thank you for walking this path all the way to the end. Many grow tired halfway through, but not you, because somewhere inside you lives someone who believes they are capable of more. And they're right. Remember, philosophy isn't just thoughts, it's the soil where character grows. And today you've been given 7 seeds, but a seed changes nothing unless you plant it. So plant it. In your morning journaling, in that first step toward profit, in an honest conversation with yourself, in gratitude for what you already have. Because we don't just live, we shape ourselves. And your daily you is a product of your beliefs. And if you change even one thought, the path will change. And when the path changes, everything does. So the choice is yours, to drift with the wind or to set your sail, to listen or to act, to survive or to live well. Now stand up, take a deep breath, and say to yourself, this is my time, and I am ready.